Thanks to everybody for joining today's webinar. We're super excited about the guests that we've got in here today. I'll kick us off here with a brief intro for two men that probably need very little introduction. We've got Tony Haller here, who is the head track coach at Plainfield North High School and founder, of course, of Feed the Cats. And we've got Brad Dixon, who's the head football coach, boys track coach, and speed and strength coordinator at Central High School. And I know these two gentlemen have worked very closely together over the years and coordinated for a lot of different things. But between the two of them, they've just got an insane wealth of experience. Both of them have helped thousands of athletes get faster and improve their speed, even indirectly through their different speed systems. And Tony, I know you with Feed the Cats and the stuff that you've put out over the years. And so the impact that these two coaches have had on the industry and on speed in general has been absolutely massive. If you're hearing you and you don't know who either of these guys are, I don't know, maybe you've been under a rock or something, but we're very excited to have them in here today. And just to set the agenda of the call for today, we find that these are valuable when they're kind of open format discussion, right? We like it to feel as though the audience is really just getting to bear witness to maybe a conversation that Tony and Brad would have, on the phone behind the scenes without an audience, right? In terms of what they're seeing as effective or ineffective and in their training and what they're doing for these athletes. And so what we'll do is we'll open things up here. I'll let Tony and Brad talk a little bit more about their backgrounds and maybe tee them up with an opening question. But then we'll just dive into letting these guys riff back and forth, and anybody in the audience can drop questions in the chat, and I'll be watching the Q&A section and kind of moderating the discussion and pitching questions to Tony and Brad to keep us on track. But really, I think we want to focus the conversation around summer and off-season training and best practices there. So Tony, I'll let you start, man, if you want to give a quick background on yourself. And we'll put this out as the opening question because we'll just start with controversy right off the bat, which is, what are the things that you were seeing coaches do wrong here in the summer and in the off season with their training?
I only have an hour.
Yeah, just an hour.
Okay, just an hour. Gee, things that coaches do wrong, basically, volume, chasing toughness, never sprinting, not developing athletes, grinding themselves to the point of being a lesser human being, a poor husband, a poor father. I can just go on and on. The football, I used to say that every school has a good track team. It's just that athletes are not coming out for track. I've also said that if I did not work at it 12 months a year, all I would have is like band kids and math nerds on my track team. I love band kids and math nerds, but they don't run the 4x1 very well. And so it's really important as a track coach to win the hearts and souls of athletes, attract athletes to your program, and then build better athletes. Football coaches have ignored that because football has been the be-all, end-all, America's sport. Jim Harbaugh called it the last bastion of masculinity in today's world. Some coach from North Carolina said that if we ever did away with football, we'd no longer win wars. We're turning boys into men. It's almost like a religious, patriotic, traditional. It's crazy. So football coaches used to say, to hell with anybody that don't want to come out for football. We don't want those guys. They probably weren't any good anyway. And times have changed. We have a school of 2,500 kids real close to us that couldn't field a freshman team this year. 2,500 kids in the school, and they couldn't field a freshman team because no one wants to play football. And one of the reasons, we'll go back to the summer thing, and that is if your summer program is 25 contact days like it is in Illinois, and you're bringing kids in at 7 in the morning and releasing them at noon, you will not have every good athlete in your school out for football. In matter of fact, that great point guard that would be your best defensive back will walk by your practices and say, thank God Almighty, I'm not playing football. And that's the case in the modern world where all of a sudden football coaches are in this battle for athletes and convincing athletes. And if you do things terribly wrong all summer, chasing toughness, fatigue seeking, we're going to break you down and then build you back up stronger. If you're doing all that crap because, you know, it's the echoes of Vince Lombardi, you probably, unless you have incredible tradition at your school, you probably are not getting many kids out for football, and you're going to get your ass beat.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, high level, just grinding these kids into the ground isn't the approach, right? And by the way, I think just so you're aware, Tony, it looks like Brad might be having some technical difficulties. We're trying to get him back in here, but he got kicked off the call for some reason, so he'll be back in a minute. And to the audience, again, you guys can use that Q&A function. Go ahead and start dropping questions in here. We want to focus the conversation again around really the summer and summer training and how we're focusing there. But Tony, I wanted to ask a question that I think will take the conversation in an interesting direction and just show, even with all of your years of experience, how you've continued to develop. Is there anything that even just between last summer and this summer, you're thinking about differently in terms of your training or changing? Or do you feel like at this point, your formulas, you're pretty dialed in and there's not much changing with what you're doing?
I think the formula has stayed the same. The things that I see, like in my track program, and I'd be the same way if I was football. Once you're going down the right path and you're feeding the cats, you're recreating athletes, you're attracting athletes, you are specific with your coaching, your general in the weight room, and your extreme and speed training. Once you have those things, it's really a matter of doing those things better. And as a coach, I think we can always do things better. And it's really no different than performing as an athlete. The things that I personally have to work on are things like fitness. I'm 65, you know, so being fit and trying to get to sleep before 10 o'clock at night, and you know, after a lifetime of staying up as late as I could, just being the best version of myself every day, so that I can perform as a coach, and then to lock in on what we're doing and do it better. And one of the things that personally that I've really worked on in the last couple of years is to become somebody that wanted to come early and stay late, which used to be like all coaches would preach that and everything. But I got to the point where, yeah, I wasn't doing that. And so what I try to do now is come early enough to make as many one-on-one contacts with kids as I can. And then afterwards to stick around and once again, one-on-one contacts, talk, you know, ask a kid how something's going and then say, tell me more. I love those 3 words, tell me more. And I think that developing those personal relationships with athletes is just win-win.
Yeah, I love that. So still coming early and staying late, but maybe being more intentional about what you're doing with that time and why you're doing it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. We're getting some good questions coming in here to the chat, Tony. So we'll start to run through some of these, and some of these might take us in an interesting direction. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. This first one is a pretty specific question. We had, I'm not sure who it was, but they asked, how would you train an athlete for the 800-meter race?
Well, that having nothing to do with football, basically, I will answer that very short and succinctly, because we may win the 4x8 at the state meet. We're ranked number 2 in the state. You know, 700 schools. We're the second best school in the state of Illinois in the 4x8. And what I have found over my 43 years of coaching track is that the best 800 runners are cross-country runners who run the 4x4 during the track season. So I believe Clyde Hart said that the 400 was a hybrid race, and he was dead wrong. The 400 is a sprint. It's not a hybrid, even at the high school level. The 800 is a hybrid. So if somebody wants to be good at the 800, you need to train half the year for endurance, like a 3-mile race, and then the other half train as a fast 4x4 guy. And when you do that, you develop those hybrid qualities to make you good at the 800. All the football coaches are signing off right now, but yeah, if you're a football coach and you think that cross country type workouts are good for football, they're not. Okay, if you want to be good in the 4x8, that's okay, but not in football.
Hey, attendance has stayed stable since you started answering that question, and I think the people love you for the pillars. So that's okay. Brad, welcome back, man. You good?
Yeah, man. The whole internet went down, the whole school.
Well, brother.
So,
well, since hey, that school internet,
it's back.
Hey, since we lost you for a second, and we're into the Q&A now, and Tony's starting to tackle some questions, so I want to get you tagged in there as well. But real quick, one question that I had for Tony that I thought was interesting is, just in your own development as a coach, is there anything, even just since last summer, that coming into this summer you are thinking about differently and doing differently in your training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the way we've changed things over the last couple of years, we used to bring kids in on Monday. We would go, I think, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, but with, so much travel, AAU basketball, travel baseball, we've moved that really to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for a couple of reasons. It gives Monday another day of rest, especially if those kids a lot of times are playing their first baseball game on Thursday night. They play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then, they have to come back. It gives them a day of rest. I think that's key. I think sometimes always thinking that the first day of the week is the best week to speed train or do max velocity, being a little bit more mindful about what kids are coming back from, switching sometimes because of how low volume we are even in the summer. Sometimes we'll move that, and we may look to it a little bit more, move those max velocity days to Thursday, so that Monday or Tuesday can be more of an acceleration day, Wednesday being a change of direction day, leading into a speed day on Thursday. So I think always continue to be mindful of, what they're coming from. I think sometimes as football coaches, especially, we see the summer as, this is our time to get them ready for the season. And we're not mindful of, they're still playing basketball. At least at my small school, they're still playing basketball, they're still playing baseball, and they're doing all these different things. And we have to take that into account in terms of what we're going to do. I can't control what they do, when they're not with me, but I can totally control what they do when I see them first thing on Tuesday.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it was a good segue here because you hit on rest and just thinking more about rest and the importance of how you structure that. We had one of our attendees ask a question that kind of ties into that, and this could be for both of you, but it's how much rest between the season and summer training should be had. So how much of a gap do you guys feel like there needs to be there?
Well, I would say that my view of days off has really changed over my 43 years of coaching. I think that coaches have always understood that the day after a game needs to be a day off. But one of the crazy things in football, especially, is if you make practices harder than games on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like my dad used to say, we're going to make practice so hard that the games are easy. Well, if you are burning the steak on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you are not performing on any of those days. If you have no days off, I suggest a wave-like practice plan where you have performance days and then not off days, but fundamental days where you're trying to really conserve. It's almost like a fundamental day is like a pregame. So you have a performance day, which is like game day, and then a fundamental day, and then a performance day, and then a fundamental day, and then of course the game is a performance. But I'll just tell this story that we have a 19-week track season, and I give my kids 8 days off for spring break. Those are color-coded green. Fundamental days are color-coded yellow, and performance days are color-coded red. And I'm uncomfortable during those 8 days. I'm a coach. I was brought up like you got to outwork people. Winners outwork losers. Stars outwork the guys that didn't make it. That's why they made it. That's why the other guys didn't make it. And so deep down, I have all these crazy feelings in me because deep down, I'm a traditional coach, and I have to fight those off because every year, our first track meet after those 8 days off have mind-blowing performances. Our kids, we do not grow as we work. We do not heal as we work. We only grow and heal when we sleep and when we have days off. And one of the really hard things as a track coach these days is that so many of my football track kids are doing, instead of having a day off, they're doing 7-on-7. Instead of having the next day off, they're going to some personal trainer who cooks them. I mean, just drives them like crazy. And then the dad loves it and all that kind of stuff. And so they're never growing. They're never healing. They'll always get injured. They will not perform well. And so I'm, I mean, I'll throw this out there right now. I'm not so sure we should not have a 4-day week in football. That would be mind-blowing for football coaches. But to actually practice on Monday and Tuesday, take Wednesday off, practice on Thursday, and play the game on Friday. No football coaches are going to do that because they'd probably get fired first time they lose a game. But I think if you really care about performance, you start really, really understanding what days off does to your people. And I think this is a beautiful segue to Brad, who does his work on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the summer.
Yeah. So to answer a couple parts of that, we just had our girls' state track meet last week. We had a sectional the week before on a Thursday. We gave our girls Friday, Saturday, Sunday completely off. We came back Monday and we were really fast, max velocity work. We did handoff work and whether they were in the hurdles, a little bit of position work. And then we ended up setting season record in the 4x2, and then we broke our school record in the 4x1. After 3 days off, running 49.91, which at the 1A level is very fast in Illinois. Our previous was 50.66. So between our conference track meet, we ran 51.23. At sectional, between sectional prelims dropping to 50.66, and then the finals, we dropped like 1.3 seconds. We did the same thing with our guys. We gave them actually 4 days off. So we had a sectional on Wednesday. We gave them Thursday, Friday, as I was at the girls' state tournament. Some guys came in and jumped and did a few things. And then, we gave them the weekend off. It was graduation. 3 of our guys are seniors. They had graduation. We came back yesterday and the guys were excited and they were ready. They're pumped for the state meet. It's to be seen yet how we'll perform, obviously. But I see the same thing, the question about summer training. So some guys are wrapping up some stuff in my athletic PE class right now. I won't see them again until June 3rd. Our track guys will, the 8 guys or 9 guys that are going to state, they'll finish Saturday, hopefully. I won't see them again until the following Tuesday. We always run really fast on that first Tuesday where the kids have had a break. They're not quite into their basketball. They're not into all their baseball stuff. They've had the first 10 days off they've had in a long, long time from training. They will be really fast. So, I think the answer there is a week to 2 weeks if you can, especially if you're training year round. I know some coaches want to kill them in the summer and so forth, but we're fine with giving the kids about 10 days off right around this time.
Got it. Awesome stuff there. I was going to say, when Tony was making his controversial statement about the football training schedule, I was like, Brad, any objections?
Yeah, no, I mean, and then as far as football, yeah. So when we get in the playoffs, we sprint on Mondays. We don't take the field on any Monday, but we get in the playoffs and our games are on Saturday. Monday is an off day for us. So when we get in the first round of the playoffs, we played on Friday night. We find out who we're playing Saturday. Obviously, we're off Saturday. We're off Sunday. We're off Monday. And then we watch film on Tuesday. We go from walking off the game field on week 9 Friday to taking the field in helmets only the following Wednesday. We're not even in shoulder pads again for almost 7 days, 6 days without putting the shoulder pads on between week 9 and the first round. And that freaks some people out. But we are who we are at that point. Obviously, hopefully we're healthy, but we're trying to continue to stay healthy. We're trying to stay fresh, and we're not reinventing anything. And we try to get our guys in and out. I know some guys are, well, we got to finish on the lights because the time change. The way we set our stuff up is we're done before it gets dark. And if you know anything about Illinois, it's getting dark by 4:30, but we're out of there and our kids are home. And that's our number one concern at that point in time is game plan and preparation, which is more mental than it is physical. And then, making sure we're still working on our basic stuff. But we're not going to keep them out there for more than an hour and a half tops and hopefully an hour 20 as we get into the postseason.
Got it. Awesome. Cool, guys. We'll go back to the chat here because we've got some good questions pouring in. I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. So, Tony, this is one for you. Dan Leary asked or stated that he would love to see what your weight room workouts look like during the summer. You want to commentate on that real quick?
Well, since I don't coach football anymore, and I don't coach summer track, I do not have a summer weight room, but I will revert back to some things I tell. Let's say I took a football job and there's an S&C guy and we had our first meeting and he say, Coach, what do you expect out of me? And I said, I want my young kids, my youngest kids in the program, I want them to learn how to lift. That I don't care about chasing numbers or building huge strength and size. I want them to be taught how to lift in the weight room. The most important thing for a young athlete. And then for the rest of them, we want to be general in the weight room. There's too many people who try to get specific, which means that, oh, we're going to do this lift because it makes you fast. And there is no lift that makes you fast in the weight room. And that really breaks the heart of S&C people. But strength is still good. I mean, you need to lift. Everyone needs to lift. Old people, 65-year-olds like me, I lift twice a week and I probably should lift 3 times a week. So even though we're staying general, we are going to lift. And then here are the parameters. The first thing is never let lifting interfere with speed training. And people who are in the S&C people are like, what does that even mean? I'm like, well, we time shit. Like we time stuff and if we have guys coming out slow the next day who are sore from your workout, then you interfered with my speed work. And they'll say, well, gosh, when can we really like crush their legs then? And my first thing would be, I don't know if you need to crush their legs, but if you do, let's do it at the end of the week after speed training is over, so they have 2 days. So that way you avoid messing with speed. Because I think if you mess with speed, you mess with performance. No, I don't think that. I know that. If you mess with speed, you mess with performance. And if you're not performing in practice, then I don't know what you're doing in practice. You're just like jogging around and like like some half effort. No, it'd be high effort, high fatigue, low performance stuff, which is kind of like traditional football, high fatigue, low performance, the grind, all that. And then the other thing I always tell the weight room people is, and this is kind of like uniquely maybe a track coach, is your lifting program should never interfere with somebody's sport. And I say that because there are so many football coaches in Illinois who are just the most obnoxious, stubborn, not Brad, obviously, obnoxious, stubborn. I could come up with a lot of really bad words, egotistical, selfish. And what they do is, yeah, you can run track, but you have to lift with us first. And then they like limp out for their track workout. That's not good for the kid. Let him be a track athlete. So, I always say, don't let lifting interfere with a kid's sport. Don't let lifting interfere with speed. Keep lifting general, speed, extreme, practice specific.
Got it. Brad, anything you want to add there quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I always say like coaches would never go into a weight room blind. They always want a big, drawn out, written out program. And it's all about adding weight to the bar, and they track every rep. They track every, if you put extra 2.5 pounds on, it's all, but those same coaches a lot of times will go out and condition, but then never track any type of jumps, any sprints, even any change of direction stuff. They just assume that whatever they're doing in the weight room is making them faster. And I used to be that coach that would time with a stopwatch at the beginning of the summer and then time with a stopwatch again at the end of the summer and never see if anything that we did throughout the summer was actually working. So when you're programming your summer, you need to understand, what are we after? And for most football coaches, it's more strength. We got beat because we weren't strong enough and we weren't tough enough. And so we go all in on strength and expect that to check the box of everything. But there are times that it's okay to go after strength. And then there's times where we want to chase speed and we want to chase positioning and we want to change of direction. And there's a place for everything. So for us, how we set it up is we try to work speed when our guys are the most fresh, like I talked about, whether that's coming in on Tuesday after 4 days off, or that's coming in after we specifically had a Wednesday workout, whether that was, footwork, change of direction, Tony Villani, game speed stuff. And what we did in the weight room, primed us for a great Thursday speed day. And then the other thing we do is our fastest athletes that are going to hit the top speeds, when it's time to run fast, they go to the track first. Now, we don't broadcast that and say, hey, you're in the slow group, you're going to the weight room first, because we do different days. And when we do change the direction, we might switch the groups when it doesn't really matter. But when it's time to perform and it's time to perform jumps at max height, or max distance, when we're trying to sprint fast, those kids are going to do that first. We're checking those boxes first. And then if there's some things that we do in the weight room, that might fatigue them a little bit, we're low volume even in the summer, that we can come back the next day, but we always do that secondary. And like Tony said at the beginning, the freshmen are on it. The crazy thing, and I used to do it too, is when we have a day one max and the freshman kid comes in and puts a bar on his back and tries to, squats, whatever. And then, they improve their squat by 100 pounds because they learned how to lift over the summer. And then, that's what we clap and say, hey, this kid gained 100 pounds on their squat max. Well, did they get faster? Did they jump higher? Did any of those things happen? And I think that's where we kind of miss the boat still in a lot of areas, is we don't track anything other than whether their max goes up, and we chase that above. I think some guys, and Tony will say this, like they'd rather lose doing more than win doing less. I think some people would rather get slower as long as they got stronger. And if what they were doing in the weight room wasn't making them faster, but they believed in it, they'll keep doing that, instead of saying, okay, hey, this didn't work. We've done this for 3 weeks and our guys have gotten slower and slower and slower. Maybe we ought to change it up. But if the pounds are still going on the bar, I think that's where people they feel comfortable in that realm. But in reality, in my opinion, getting someone stronger in the weight room is 100% the easiest thing that you can do in terms of strength and conditioning. Getting someone faster is a lot harder.
Brad, I was going to add to that. I don't know if I told you, but Chris Corfus spent like a week with the Detroit Lions, and he wrote all their speed protocols for the next year. And I believe it's Mike Clark up there, a veteran. We met him down in Dallas when we had a TFC. Anyway, great guy. He's been in the NFL for a long time. And he said something to Chris that I'll never forget. He said, basically in the NFL, we've been doing the same thing seemingly forever. And we don't make anybody any better. And so here, this guy that is one of the most veteran S&C people in the entire NFL. And by the way, the Lions, one of the most progressive teams in the NFL, hired him. And they're like thinking like you and I think, it's like if we're not making our athletes better, we can't just keep telling them trust the process. And the whole idea that an incoming NFL player has a speed that is somehow immutable, that will not improve and will not decline, is an absolute falsehood. And so the things we're saying, this is not just high school stuff. This is NFL stuff. There's some $1 million S&C coaches in the Power Five that are barbaric, strength only people.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with Tony a story. So I've speed trained a college athlete, Division II, for the last couple summers. He left me last summer hitting almost 22 miles an hour. he called me up a week and a half ago and said, "Hey, I'm back for the summer." I'm like, "All right, well, let's bring you in and see where you're at." Of course, been living in the weight room. I mean, 4 sets of 10 on front squat, can bury a 405 front squat, just no speed work. Everything is heavy weight room. Ran 2 fly 10s under 20 mile an hour and 1 right at 20 mile an hour. I mean, that's a 2 mile an hour difference in a college S&C program that is in Division II, and they do 0 speed work. And he comes to me, some high school coach in Illinois, to get speed work and the kid is strong enough. If you can bury a 405 front squat, you are chasing minute strength gains for a lot of negatives with it. And this kid is an All-American kid. And if the coach says, "Hey, I want you to squat 485 by the end of the summer," he's going to do it because he wants to please the coach and so forth. So, he sent me his programming and I don't ever talk bad about a coach. I just said, "Hey, send me what you're doing. Let's figure out where we can fill in some gaps and or do some things to limit the damage on some of the other bilateral, because the S&C world, it pretty much everywhere lives in the bilateral world where nothing that we do in sport is bilateral on the same, 2 feet. And Chris and Dan Fichter have talked to me a lot about how doing things bilateral paralyzes the cross crawl pattern in the brain. And if you live in that world, then you're going to have a lot of deficiencies in your movement patterns. And that's what I'm seeing. And it's crazy that at, what we consider the highest levels, they may be the furthest from, what reality should be.
And one last anecdotal thing, a guy that played for my son, Alec, at Edwardsville High School, was a top 3 hurdler in the state, super fast, came back and talked to, he's playing for the Eagles now. He's actually team captain 4 or 5 years ago. But anyway, he came back and talked to the team, and he said, "If I gave you any advice at all, it would be don't let them take away your speed. As soon as you go to college, they're going to try to put weight on you." And he said, "Me personally, I've never been as fast as I was in high school." And this guy is a defensive back for the Philadelphia Eagles playing at the highest level. And he knows he's a step or 2 slow because no one has nurtured that speed. And when I think of like doing that same crap to 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds who we don't even know where their ceiling is for speed, that somehow to never work on speed and only work on, like how much can you lift, just stunts their growth.
Yeah, good stuff there, guys. I love that question because I feel like it really got at some core philosophies that both of you have around, like Tony, I feel like sometimes you get characterized as being like anti-weight room or anti-S&C. And I think you lean a little bit in further, and that's not the case at all, right? I think it's not anti-weight room. You're anti trying to get the weight room to do things that it's not going to do, and therefore negatively impacting other components of performance, right? And
right.
I probably didn't articulate that well as a layman, but I do think that that's a common thing that I hear in talking with performance coaches regularly. So I thought that was great stuff. Okay, cool. So getting back to the chat here, hey, to the audience, we've got 34 questions here. I want to make sure that we get to as many of them as possible at the same time. I think that we get the best of Tony and Brad when we let them deep dive on this stuff a little bit. And I think that some of the places that they're taking the conversation is answering other questions that I'm seeing come up. So we'll get to as many of them as possible without feeling like these guys have to give, 1-sentence responses here. But Alan asked a good question that might be a quick one. He said, "I run training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings, starting each workout with atomic speed workout each day. Good or bad idea?"
I like it. The atomic speed workout, people can look it up. It's on, I wish I'd packaged it and sold it because it has a great hook. 15 minutes of work, 15 minutes of time, 60 seconds of work, and people are like, "Gosh, sign me up," and you're going to feel better afterwards than you felt before it. So the atomic speed workout, you can find it on YouTube, and it is so minimal that, a lot of people ask, could we do it every day? And I think you probably could. The only problem with doing it every day is there's probably some other things I think that would augment, the things you're actually doing. I think you need to do some X factor stuff instead of just doing speed every day. but it's so microdosed that I think that you can do it. And so many football teams have gotten rid of their 40-minute fatigue-seeking, antiquated warm-up, 40 minutes, and replaced it with my atomic speed workout, where you do some speed drills, time twice, and jump right into practice.
Yeah, love that. Brad, we've got a question specific for you in here too.
Yeah.
Rob from Wyoming asked, at what point in the summer have you started to focus on acceleration and COD, parentheses, Tony Villani stuff, in addition to max velocity?
Yeah, from the beginning, that's probably one of the bigger things we've changed a little bit. Because we are in football, obviously we've got to touch max speed, and we do that whenever I feel like the kids should be at their best. That's what we're doing on that day, 100%. But there are things in the game of football where you have to be able to change direction, and we're not talking like, and if you don't know who Tony Villani is, come to Dallas, or look up his stuff. It's not gimmick, go around cones and define patterns. It's like, there's certain ways that you're gonna move and change direction, whether that's a break plant separate or a wide base crossover. We're talking about tools that we give the kids, and we show them how to control speed. So sometimes the two Tonys, people think they are competing thoughts when Tony Villani says get fast. But then when it comes to football training specific or basketball or whatever, now teach them how to control that speed. But if you never have the speed, you're never going to be in the conversation in the fourth quarter, or you don't have any speed to control. So get fast, but then learn how to control it. So and this is where I like Wednesday. So if we do speed on Tuesdays, or I'm setting up a speed day on Thursday, we'll start at the very basic on how to simply be able to set an inside edge. And it may be where you're in a wide base stance and you just learn how to move over your inside edge. Just simple things that kids will learn, and we'll video that stuff and we'll teach them how to do this. And it's, to make, if you came to one of my Wednesday workouts early in the summer and you're like, man, these guys, this is slow. This is, where's the sweat? Where's the grunting? Where's the, the bear crawls and all this? We're trying to teach our guys skills. And then it's things that we see show up on the football field, so then I'll pick out tons of video throughout the season, and, I'll look at pictures from our guy that takes photography, whether it's basketball, and you'll see all these shin angle changes, and you'll see what our guys look like and videos of our quarterback making a attack 45 cut, which is one of the things we worked on, and the defender just going the other way, and different stuff that we see. So yeah, we do that from day one. We do it really all year, but never at the expense of max speed. But we have to touch it because we're not getting that in football. The only time you're getting max speed in football really is if you're on defense and you're chasing someone from behind, and we don't want a lot of those anyway. So yes, we're doing it from the get-go of the summer. Like I said, after we have attacked the bucket of speed, and that is the priority, obviously, because every kid can get faster, and then we'll mix in the other stuff.
I want to comment on that. People have, Brad alluded to this, kind of pitted Tony Villani and me against each other. Like I'm the max speed guy, and he's like, game speed is not max speed. And we talked for about an hour on the phone about a year ago, and we've been in a couple clinics together. Brad alluded to the fact that we have a sprint-based football clinic coming up at the first week in June, that I think is going to be, the links are going to be below this recording when people get it. So Tony Villani speaking there as well. But I've developed this pyramid where the base, the thing that you have to create first, is rest, recovery, sleep, nutrition, hydration. So it's all being as healthy as you can be first, because you can't go to the next level without those things. So the next thing is max speed. The next thing is max speed. And of course, max speed improves acceleration. So we're not anti-acceleration. So max speed is the next level. And you must have that before, as Brad talked about, before you can do sport-specific movements. And I call that agility. That's what Tony Villani is a pro on. And so you've got to have that rest, recovery, sleep thing first. And then you've got to get your kids as fast as they can be. And then you can start doing the agility type work, sport specific movements. and start reverse engineering the sport itself. But don't start doing that until you have great athletes.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to give you the opportunity to respond there, Tony, because I'm sure you wanted to set the record straight. Thanks for jumping in. Cool, guys. There's a kind of a string of questions in the chat here as I jump around that I think all kind of have a similar theme. And so I want to jump around a little bit and dive into these. Chris asked, he said, I train college athletes for the summer, so their coaches send them home with packets with a lot of conditioning in it. How do I get them faster while also giving them that anaerobic work so they don't feel left behind? And that's the specific question, but there's also some other questions in here that I think in general just kind of touch on this theme of, you know, as you're working against coaches that just have a different philosophy, right? And kind of how you guys handle that. So maybe answer Chris's question specifically of what you do in that situation, but also more generally to just how can you, you know, get coaches who maybe have some more antiquated ideas or aren't in alignment there, more in alignment?
Well, obviously, Brad and I are on a crusade, a mission, you know, to help coaches, because coaches will live better lives with more rest and shorter practices. And, you know, once the base of a coach's pyramid is rest, recovery, sleep, nutrition, hydration, you know, he's going to become a better coach. So those packets that we see that are just absolutely, they're a joke. It's almost like I feel like I'm being punked when I read it. And then there's some conditioning test. There's a start of the season, you know, where if you don't pass it, you got to wake up at 5 a.m. And it's almost like they're trying to run you out of the Marines or something. You know, like you have to do it every morning until you pass it and you have no chance and all that kind of stuff. But I go back to Brian Kula. Brian Kula is the trainer. He used to be the track coach of McCaffrey. And he'd been the trainer. He'd known McCaffrey, worked with McCaffrey for 15, 20 years, whatever. And basically they do no endurance work, none. However, they get quote unquote in shape by stacking anaerobic work on top of each other. They will do 5 minutes of extreme intensity. It may be sprinting, it may be jumping, it may be squatting, whatever, followed by enough recovery to be extreme again, followed by enough recovery to be extreme again. And so they're stacking this anaerobic stuff, and it goes against everything S&C people have learned in the textbook, that you have to develop a huge aerobic engine in order to recover from anaerobic work. And we're saying, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, because you can get that aerobic effect by doing anaerobic work. And so I asked Brian, I'll never forget this. I'll say, has Christian ever had to do one of those stupid conditioning tests? He said, yeah, with the Panthers, I think they had to do like 16 110s. I said, well, was there hell to pay? Did he fall apart? And he said, no, he won it. And so you would think that in order to condition for the 16 110s, you would almost have to train like 30 minutes of stadium stairs, a 4-mile run, you know, like doing all this aerobic type crap that I still think makes you slower. No, it does make you slower, or at least lowers your ceiling. And what they said is, to hell with that conditioning test. We're going to work to become the fastest, best football player we can be. And by God, good athletes pass tests.
Yeah, I mean, I would piggyback off of that and say that when we used to do that kind of stuff, our best athletes would win just because they had a higher speed ceiling. And so if an athlete could run 22 mile an hour, they would win the conditioning too, because they could do it at 19, and they would still be in the lead. Whereas a guy that ran 18 is running 15. I mean, football is one of the only sports out there, college football, where literally every year someone dies because of one of these tests. And it doesn't matter, you know, what someone did before or after, you know, whether they did in the summer or if it happened, and they're going to give them these tests. And, you know, for what? I mean, really, in my opinion, the only reason for the test is to see who has it and who doesn't, but you already know that information anyway, in my opinion. You know, all it does is prove that you've got dudes that are willing to do whatever. whatever. I can't really repeat exactly what Kurt Hester says. Essentially, 98% of your team is tough. The other 2% are mentally blank, 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 blank. You can get one of those percents to hop on board. The other percent, get rid of them, kind of deal. And I feel like those tests are for that 1% that isn't going to jump on board anyway. And you already knew that before you ran the test. And in my opinion, if the dude can go out and jump, and he's 6'4" and he can go get a ball in the end zone when it's time and crunch time, do you really care what he got on his 16-110 test? But I feel like it's just a rite of passage at that level. And Kier Wyndham Flat has kind of created that tribe test, or I don't know if he's still calling it that now, but there are some other options out there to kind of prove whether kids or whatever you think, if you need it. Sometimes being an S&C is about giving the coach a little bit, if you're not the head coach, to make them think. A lot of head coaches want to know that the workout sucked. So sometimes you have to create a little something that says, hey, yeah, we did this today. Oh, yeah. Did that kill them? Yeah, they were, oh, man, that's great, And so sometimes you got to, and he comes up with that tribe test, which is, I think, 6-25, you go 25 down and there's a change of direction component and you're trying to get to a certain, and it's based upon the work rest ratio of football. And so there are other things out there, but at no point are we ever going to run 110 yards on a football field and do it 16 times. And like I said, so for me, and right or wrong, but I'm about it for the kid, and I'm training a college kid that has the same workout plan. He's going to do probably some of it. I'm going to talk him out of doing a bunch of it, and we're going to get fast. And when I time him every week, and if he's not getting faster, and I say, what's going on? He's like, well, I did this, and this. And I say, well, how about next week we try not to do that? Don't do those two things and see what happens. And then when they start getting faster and they feel better, and Tony said it a bunch of times, your max speed or max velocity is a barometer of your health. And I think that's 100%. So if the kids are slow, then in my opinion, their CNS is not recovered. They're beat up and they're not very healthy.
I don't know if I told you this, Brad, but about a month ago, it was right before Saquon Barkley signed his contract with the Eagles, that Saquon called me, and I tried to act, like, oh, this is normal. And of course, that's not normal for an NFL star to call me. But he said, Coach, I've been following your stuff, and I wanted to ask you, like, if there's something I could add to my work that would make me faster. I feel like I'm losing the step. And I said, well, you're going to hate my answer because I don't have anything for you to add. I'm going to say you need to subtract some stuff. And he thought about it, and he said, so like in a workout where I'm doing 2 sets of 10 100s, maybe I should just do 1 set of 5. And I said, no, you should do no 100s. And he goes, and this is classic. Saquon Barkley says to me, he says, Coach, I feel like I've been brainwashed. And I said, that's okay. We all have. We all have. That the harder we work, the more luck we have and all that stuff. But, I don't see any reason for football players to run hundreds.
I think the other great story on that is Rob Gronkowski during COVID. Brought 10 different shirts on one day to video himself doing whatever the Buccaneers wanted him to do for his conditioning, so that whenever that day came, he could just send a video, and it was all done on the same day. It was 1 rep in a different color shirt, because that was the value he put on that conditioning as, if not the best, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And obviously no one ever said, man, Rob Gronkowski is out of shape. He knew what made him be successful, and it definitely wasn't that, And so where I come from with those things, I always say, your players that are slow, I mean, you might kill them, literally kill them. The guys that were fast are going to do just enough to survive it and be out in front, but they're not getting any better when you do that stuff. So it's really a waste of time. And it's why someone has a 4-hour summer workout instead of an hour and a half or an hour, because they think they have to fit in all this conditioning instead of get them in, sprint them, be fast, get a good quick lift in, get them home, keep them fresh, keep them healthy. And that's our goal of the summer, literally to try to take as little time as we can from the athletes. So for me, when fall rolls around, it's not, man, I feel like we've been doing football all summer, right? No, it's like, man, I am so ready for football. It feels like it's been 2 years since we last put the pads on. And that's what I want our guys to feel like.
Love it. Okay, cool, gents. I'll leave it up to you. We've got a couple minutes left here. I want to leave time for you guys to talk a little bit about the event that you have coming up. So we can do like one more quick question, or you guys can, if you have any just closing thoughts, statements you feel like would be, advice that you want to give. Would you guys rather do one more question, or maybe just a little bit of advice as big takeaways? And then
one more question.
All right, let's do it. So we've got, I'm going to hand select here. This is a good one because I feel like it's a little bit of a different topic. Pat asked, what have you observed recently with female speed athletes and injuries, soccer, lacrosse, and field hockey? Anecdotally, I've seen a lot of recent ACL tears. Do you train girls differently? And is summer the time to implement some sort of injury prevention training?
I think I hate to answer every question with sprint, but I think sprinting bulletproofs soft tissue injuries. I think if you do two things, and I do not coach girls. Brad actually coaches boys and girls track. I've never coached a girl in 43 years. But I know enough about training to understand that if you do two things, you could three things, bulletproof soft tissue injuries. One is volume, keep your volumes low. I think that 90% of all injuries happen in the second half of practice or the second half of a game. I think that fatigue is a huge problem with injuries. Number two is sprinting. That somehow the incredible symphony of muscles firing in proper order, allowing you to sprint super fast, gives you a healthy benefit. That some people say they don't sprint because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. It's just the opposite. You need to sprint so you don't get hurt. And then the third thing is something that Brad and I are really huge on, and that's reflexive performance reset, where our good friends Chris Korfis and Cal Dietz own the company. And it's everywhere. If you're not aware of RPR, I think it's a total game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I would start obviously with volume of training and sport. We play too much and we don't practice enough in all reality. I was talking to our female coaches actually, because I'm transitioning the athletic director role next year, and I was talking to the training side of it, and a lot of people think summer's the time to kill them, but in all reality, kids are playing 3 sports on the same day, sometimes 4. And so there's too much of that. So obviously, we talked to him, like Coach said, the bottom of his pillar, talked to him about sleep and recovery. RPRs, anecdotally, we were in the state championship game. We got to stop on the first series in a team that had beat us the year before in the state title game. And our 22, almost 23 mile an hour kid that played tackle and outside linebacker and anchored 3 of our relays, 4x1, 4x2, and 4x4, is coming off the edge, and he missteps and his knee buckles. And, we were ecstatic that we made the play. And then I see him laying on the ground, and I'm like, oh no. And I asked the guys in the press box, I'm like, what happened? They're like, oh, he just went down. I go, non-contact. And I went, oh man. Got out there and he got to the sideline. Next thing I know, I look behind him. He's doing some pogo jumps and stuff. And he's like, Coach, I'm ready to go. And he had just had he might have hyperextended it or whatever. I mean, he sprinted the next week. I mean, when you look at it on film, it should have been an ACL tear. I've just had too many of those things happen since we started doing RPR. Obviously everyone wants to study and all this stuff, but I've had athletes that probably should have injured themselves worse that didn't, because what RPR is about is to get your body out of survival mode, that school, sitting in a desk all day, going to a 3-hour practice, going to your trainer, doing all this stuff, get your body in that survival mode, and things aren't firing the way they're supposed to. RPR gets you back in that. So our kids do it. They do it before every practice. They do it before every workout. So when I get these college athletes and teach them that, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a big part of it. And then getting off two legs in the weight room, that when you live in a bilateral world, and then you have to be in a cross crawl situation where you have to change direction and stuff like that. If you've lived in that world for too much and you put all this weight on your back, then when you've got to be on that single leg and all that stuff. So you've got to be able to vary your training up. It's not all about how much you back squat, how much you deadlift, all that different stuff. Between Corfist and Cal and Dan Fichter with altitude drops and spring ankle model and even the Villani change of direction stuff. There's so many things that you can add in that coaches kind of leave out, because to have someone do a 30-second spring ankle ISO versus, squatting 315, they're going to choose squatting 315 every day of the week, or if you get them in a split squat and it's like, well, yeah, but our guys can't lift as much. Well, okay. How many times are they in a two-legged deep, ass to grass squat versus how many times are they in a split leg? And then the last thing I'll say is, like Tony said, then you add in sprinting, which is 2 to 3 times your body weight, slamming into the ground in a 1/10 of a second on one leg. That there's no other forces you can put on the body than that. And, so I think all that combined in a training program, there's no foolproof plan, but if you're sprinting your girls, I think you're ahead of the game, over a lot of programs, 100%.
Awesome. All right, cool, guys. Apologies, we're never able to get to all of the questions, but I feel like, and this isn't saying anything bad about Coach Haller or Brad, but I think this might be like the lowest amount of questions we've ever gotten to, just because there were so many for you guys. So I think that this is a good transition into, I know that you guys want to talk a little bit about the event that you have coming up, and also just any other places where they can learn more about what you guys are doing, or maybe learn more and find answers to some of the questions we didn't get to. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, June 7th and 8th. That's right, isn't it, Brad?
Yeah.
June 7th and 8th, we'll be at Liberty Christian High School in Argyle, Texas. Jason Witten is the head football coach there. But Brad's going to speak 3 times. I'm going to speak 3 times. And then, Brad, do you want to talk about the other 3 speakers?
Yeah, so we've got David Neal, who's the strength coach, and he's going to speak on the shred mill and that organization of training. We have Tony Villani that's going to speak on all his game speed stuff. And then we've got Kurt Hester, who is, everything that we said about college S&C and the negatives is the absolute opposite. He had a tweet out the other day where he didn't back squat any of his guys during spring ball. And then, guess what? All the other things that they did, their back squat increased. It was crazy. We didn't lift heavy during, the track kids during the track season. Today, at the end of the school year, before we have 10 days off, the kids that are done, guess what? They all were able to lift heavier than they were before the track season by sprinting and doing all the other things that we did. So he's going to talk about contact prep and a lot of the things that you can do to get your athletes prepared instead of just beating on them all the time. And I think the big thing that we're trying to do with this clinic is Tony and I get a lot of questions because everyone's old school and how do you do tackling and what about toughness and what sprint-based football? So what, you just kind of go out there and you sprint a little bit and you go home, and then the next day you wear helmets and walk around and then you go home, and it's the opposite. We're a double tight wing T team that rushed for 5,000 yards. That had to play against another team that rushed for 5,000 yards, where everybody up front was 6'3" and 275 on average. And all of our guys were 200 pounds or less. So you've got to be able to do what you got to do. But it's about what Tony said, rest, recovery, sleep. How can we look at football not from how much can I do in practice, but in reality, how much can I cut out of practice to make sure on Friday night or Saturday, whenever your game is, that our kids can go out and perform and not just survive. And I think it's hard for coaches to wrap their mind around the idea because that's not how we were coached. And that's probably not how we coached early in our career. So one of the talks I'm going to give is kind of like the truth about sprint-based football and what it actually is and what it's not. And then just some of the, Tony's going to talk about the whole, essentially the feed the cats idea in general. And then we're going to dive into some of the specifics of what you can do. And I always tell coaches, you can't use my recipe. It's what I do here in small school Illinois with a 50-man roster in a school of 220 kids. Everyone's situation's different. But I think it's the mindset and the idea and to get yourself thinking, not in terms of practice, but performance, and game. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're trying to get out there.
I think the only thing to add to that is that last year, this is kind of amazing, in 8 different states, there was a sprint-based football team, a Feed the Cats football team, that won a state championship. Of course, Brad was one of them, 14-0. Garrett Mueller was another one, 14-0 in Minnesota. And all 3 of us are very easy to find. Brad Dixon, Garrett Mueller, and myself. If you type in our name, let's just say we're all over the place, and you can find us.